For joining us at the November meeting of the Planning, Zoning, Transportation Committee of ANC 1C. I'm Amir Irani. I'm chair of the ANC, and I also represent SMD 1C01, which is the southwest corner of Adams Morgan. I'd also like to give an opportunity for my fellow commissioners to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Megan Faulkner, Commissioner for 1C04 in the northwest corner of Adams Morgan.
Hello, I'm Jake Fauschini, Commissioner for 1C07, 18th to 17th in kind of the heart of Adams Morgan.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So the first item on our agenda is a resolution on pedestrian and transportation safety. Firstly, before getting to that, I want to express my deepest sadness and condolences to the family and friends of Nina Larson. It was a tragic death, and circumstances like this shouldn't be in our community or anywhere else in the district. This is transportation safety is something that everyone deserves. Safety on the road is something that everyone deserves, whether you're a pedestrian, a bicyclist, or in your car. We have members from DDOT's Vision Zero Safety Initiative here tonight with us to discuss that, along with Cynthia Turcios, the Ward 1 DDOT liaison. Also, I'd like to take a moment to thank my fellow commissioners for holding and attending a vigil in remembrance of Miss Larson, and for very quickly getting out a letter in support of transportation and safety improvements throughout Adams Morgan. I'd like to now cut to the resolution on the agenda. Let's see, Megan, would you mind sharing your screen?
Sure, one moment. Let me know if that is showing for everyone.
We see it.
Great.
Thank you, Commissioner Faulkner. So what this calls for is in the whereas clauses, there are some data points given, and there's some data points that, from the multiple 311 requests that we've had in Adams Morgan, some that are closed, some with SLAs that are just, they're tens or, in some 150 business days, or, some of these SLAs are just, they're just too much for items that need to be resolved immediately, that there should be some process of flagging it and it gets resolved. There are outstanding TSIs, traffic safety investigations. There were traffic safety assessments requested over the last few years. In fact, about 1 year ago, almost exactly, this ANC passed a resolution with a list of requests made of DDOT that we had made over the prior few years that were still unresolved. this ANC has, through the last 5 years that I've been on the ANC, had transportation safety as one of the top issues that we harp on at every meeting. And it's beyond comprehension that we can only get, it's beyond comprehension to only have people attend. I don't want to say that the only time they attend, but I'm just, people need to pay attention to what's said, need to look at metrics on the road that are not deaths and injuries. There needs to be better ways to measure the safety of our roads and our transportation infrastructure other than the number of deaths that occur on the road or injuries that occur on the road. And this is something that we've been harping on for years, and something about that has got to change. This resolution is something that we put together very quickly. We will be throwing in more data points about, we say multiple 311 requests. Well, there's a list out there. And I think it's about time that we put down that list and try to hold people accountable for it. And so we'll be putting in all of these additional data points. And at this time, I'd like to also thank Commissioner Faulkner for helping put together the resolution on such short notice, and my fellow commissioners for all of their help throughout the neighborhood. So having said that, I'll open this up to questions from my fellow commissioners.
Yeah, I don't have a question, but I just wanted to, I appreciate a lot of what you said, echo a lot of what you said. And I just wanted to say specifically about this crosswalk where Nina Larson died is right outside the building that I live in. It's not in my SMD, but it is right across the street because I live on the edge of my SMD. And the number of times that I have been in that crosswalk and drivers have gone through it while I have been in the middle of the road. I know for many people in my building, and the number of times I have thought to myself, probably nothing with this crosswalk will change until someone dies. And I am honestly horrified to have been correct. I know there are crosswalks and intersections like this across the city. I also, recognize that there are parts of the city where pedestrians die at much higher rates than in Adams Morgan. And it is just frankly appalling to me that things do not change until people yell and scream about it and until someone dies. And that's just what Commissioner Ronnie said, like there have to be other metrics than just, basically like people being sacrificial lambs and children being hit and killed and 24-year-olds and it's unacceptable. And I know I'm not saying anything substantive, but I've heard from so many neighbors who are just heartbroken and who realize how horrifyingly how it could have been them or their children. And I know that it's not just in Adams Morgan and that it is across the city and it is in neighborhoods where people are not as, do not have as much time and energy to yell at DDOT as we do. And I don't want to say yell at DDOT, but just to ask and ask and ask. And so I just want to say too, it's not just about right here, it's about the whole city.
Thank you, Commissioner Faulkner. Commissioner Falaskini.
Thank you, Chairman Arani and Commissioner Faulkner for your thoughts and very eloquent explanation of the frustration that we all feel and the hurt that we all feel to have to be here only because a life was taken, and truly a hope that things will change, that we have so much public space that we have just dedicated to cars and automobiles, and not even for folks who live here, but for folks just traveling through. And we've created this entire structure of public infrastructure that is furthering a culture of death and a culture of harm to our community. And we have to change it. We have to change it. As a parent, it is terrifying to walk my kids around this neighborhood all the time. And I know that it isn't even as bad for me as it is for many other communities in our city. And it's just awful that we had to, that Nina Larson was tragically killed in that intersection, and that so many petitions for change were unheard leading up to it, and that's why we have to go and pass another resolution and try to push harder for more. So I truly hope that we are on the precipice of changing this city for the better, so that it is not just a city that revolves around the use of automobiles, but one that revolves around people and our use of our public space for more than just traveling through. And I hope that this will be an instigation for change.
Thank you, Commissioner Palesquini, for that. I think, we're not asking for, as you were saying, we're not just asking for changes in our neighborhood either, as Commissioner Faulkner was saying, as Commissioner Palesquini was saying, everywhere. And we don't just want another, we had asked previously for high visibility crosswalks and flashing beacons, but in all honesty, people are still getting hit in crosswalks with flashing beacons, with fresh paint and high visibility crosswalks. So there need to be better ways of measuring what is a safe road. And I think that takes more systemic change rather than just, a crash occurred here, let's put in fresh paint and a flashing light and some pylons. So this resolution is a first step. By no means is it anything that will take us all the way there. It's, there are additional data points that we will be putting in and additional measures, but this is one step, and I hope that my fellow commissioners will take the time to add to it, to make it a better resolution, add in the metrics, and add in their thoughts as to how we can promote more systemic change in our transportation infrastructure. So with that, I'll take comments from members of the community as well. You can raise your hand or raise your hand on Zoom or dial *9 if you're calling in. Commissioners, any other questions or comments before I call to a vote? Okay. I move that we adopt, that we recommend that at the meeting of the full commission on December 1st, that PZT committees recommends that the full commission support this resolution on pedestrian and transportation safety. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? Any abstentions? Okay. Moving to the second item on our agenda, we have staff members from DDOT with us to discuss important safety updates in Adams Morgan and beyond. Miss Bailey and Ms. Turcios.
Hi, Commissioner. Thanks for handing it over to me, and Cynthia, my colleague, is also on. I'm really here mainly because of the tragic fatality we had last weekend, and I just want to start by saying that it's a terrible thing that no one should have to experience that loss. And of course, that everyone at DDOT really feels that as well, and it impacts what we do, and it impacts how we feel about it. And I try to bring that urgency to the work that I do at DDOT every day. It comes from these tragic fatalities like the one on Saturday. And so I just want to say that I'm very, our hearts are with the community in this, and we're definitely feeling it too. In terms of the safety efforts, relative specifically to this crash, you're probably aware of this, but I'll just go through the process that we follow in district government through the fatal crash. At the time of the crash, MPD Major Crash Investigative Unit conducts a full investigation and crash reconstruction, including gathering things like video, et cetera. And that's still ongoing. Those typically take some time to complete. But that's a very thorough crash reconstruction and investigation that they're doing. In addition, they brief DDOT staff on the circumstances surrounding the crash on site. And based on that, we've identified, not directly related to this specific crash, but we've identified some short-term safety improvements in the vicinity that are already making their way through the process. And we've identified some other items that were still in discussion and investigation to see how we can implement, how and where we can implement those in the vicinity. So that's kind of where we are in our response time. And I know that there was some discussion about the post-fatal crash site memos, site visit memos, which memorialize all those activities that I was just describing at DDOT. Those can include anything from markings, projects, to recommendations for a signal study, and other things. So those, they really run the gamut depending on if it's on the expressway or in a neighborhood. There's a lot of different things that may or may not come in. And so those are underway right now. We're having discussions across the agency, across divisions, looking at opportunities to improve safety at the site and nearby. We did receive a letter from some ANC members with several requests, and I think Cynthia could give an update on the one of those that we were aware of prior to the letter. And Cynthia, do you want to jump in with that, or where are we with that one? This is I think I would say there's 5 items on the list. Anyways, I'll let you cover that.
No problem. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to go ahead and speak on the study regarding the one-way conversion for Wyoming. It was a previous TSA, now TSI, that was submitted a couple years ago. The data has actually been collected. The letter was signed today. I will go ahead and share it on my screen. Am I able to? Yes, there's a share screen option. Give me one moment as I pull that up.
Cynthia, you want me to talk about a couple of things while you're working on
Yes, for some reason it's not showing me on preview when I try to screen share. Mhm.
So in terms of the other items on the list, I guess that one question is, I guess I understand that the list of requests was not a formal resolution from the ANC. And that doesn't mean we can't bring them in as requests, but I just want to confirm the status of the list in the letter. And I don't actually know who of this group was on the letter, but maybe some of you were.
The letter was not presented to each commissioner, but some of us in the committee had signed on to the letter. However, everyone supports all the items that are in there.
Okay, fair. I just wanted to confirm that.
There's a whole list of resolutions with many items that we've asked for that have not been implemented.
Gotcha. Let's look at that list together separately, and I'm happy to take a look at that with the TSI team. I assume those went through TSI process, or what we're not calling TSIs, TSAs.
TSAs, yeah.
TSAs. Yeah. Let's take it. If you have that list, and Cynthia may already have it, well, we can confirm and go through that and see where those items are. For the list that was sent over, some are larger projects than others, and larger reviews than others. So we just have to take a look at that and see if we can move on those items. I think the one other thing I did want to mention, besides the one-way conversion that Cynthia is pulling up, is there is a forthcoming study coming up on Columbia that you should get a letter about in the next, I think, about a month, within the next month. You should expect to see that's going to be focusing on transit quality of service and improvements in the corridor, but that'll be another opportunity to take a look at some other intersections along Columbia as well. So just encourage you to kind of be thinking about that as an opportunity to take another look at some of the locations. Part of transit access is being able to walk to transit safely and comfortably. And so that is something that could fit in with that study, which will result in a project. It's a pretty linked process going through the bus priority program. So definitely expect to see that coming up.
Well, I'll first ask my fellow commissioners, do you have questions for Ms. Bailey or Ms. Turcios?
I think Cynthia said she emailed the letter to the ANC chair. So maybe you can share it. She's having trouble with her computer.
Let me see.
I apologize. I think it's still locked on my end to screen share, but I shared it with you, Commissioner Ronnie, if that's okay. I was intending on sharing it after the meeting, but more than happy to send it now. I sent that over your way. It's the data analysis for the Adams Morgan East-West study. And I was speaking previously with Commissioner Wood that the study was conducted. I was awaiting on the signature from the project manager who was out of the office at the time, and I just wanted to go ahead and share that with you. I will be sure to share it with him too, but if you would like to meet after looking at it with him or individually, whatever works for the commission, I'm happy to have a follow-up meeting on the analysis.
Is this, I'm just opening up my email to see what was shared. Is this something that you wanted to present right now?
I am more than happy to visually.
Is this something that you
Share it?
had intended to present, is what I'm
No,
asking?
no. I wanted to go ahead and share it to the commission. I'm not the engineering expert who conducted the study, but that's why I said I'm more than happy to schedule a follow-up meeting once you all have looked at it, so we can go ahead and get the appropriate engineers on the meeting to go ahead and talk about next steps on what the ANC wants to do regarding the findings.
So
Okay.
this is about the one-way conversion of Wyoming,
Yeah.
is that right? Yeah. So I think the good news is the process has progressed, and I know it's frustrating sometimes, totally acknowledge that. So the process has progressed, and we're kind of now entering the next phase. And that's really unrelated to this specific crash, but we just wanted to share that since that was an item in the letter sent over this week.
I think that that's well, thank you for sharing that news. I think also that goes to show that all of these processes take incredibly too much time, and they are sort of a black box. They are a black box. I don't know, sort of a black box, because I think that we had requested that and had signatures from people on the block, and there was an ANC resolution and multiple different ways this bubbled up to DDOT at different time periods. And I want to say maybe that started 4 years ago. But we're getting to it now. And not to say that it shouldn't happen now, but just that I think that we should examine why things are taking so long. There should be an urgency behind these issues, and the urgency shouldn't take place only because someone dies or because someone gets hurt.
I couldn't agree more, Commissioner, and I just want to jump in and say, like, we're aware of the issue, and that we've taken a lot of steps in the last few months to change the dynamics on the timing. And it's at this point, it's really just a matter of getting enough staff on board. We're actually hiring right now in order to process things more quickly. And it's just a process at this point of getting better. Now, traffic safety investigation requests are uneven. They're all over the place. They're not equitably distributed. Anybody can put one in, right? So there is a tension there we're trying to address as well. That's the one thing I would say. But we have made a lot of improvements to the process, and it should, going forward, feel more predictable. That doesn't mean every single idea that comes in from the public will be something we can implement right away. But I'm just saying the process should feel a lot more transparent and a lot more predictable in terms of the timeline. That's something that, when did that process start? There was a backlog created partly because of COVID last year that was pretty sizable in June. And we put a big push on, and we reassigned people from other projects into the traffic safety investigations. That cleared out the entire backlog. But we get at least a couple thousand, depending on how you count them, every year. And that needs to be staffed up significantly to be able to accommodate that many.
Is there some sort of, if there's a few thousand every year, how are they sorted through? How does one take priority over the other?
Right now, that's a great question. We're trying to figure out how to deal with that because we can't control the input, right? Like tonight you could go back to your desk and put in 20 more, right? It's like there's no control on that end. So we could get 2,000 one year and 5,000 next. So how do we actually process all of them? That is a challenge. And I think right now we're just triaging them as best we can. And like I said, we are trying to staff up. So stay tuned if that changes, but that is our current process. Now we are trying to meet and and exceed all the SLAs on them. And I know that that's kind of a frustration point for a lot of, not just your ANC.
It's you know, to me, hearing a few thousand, I understand how any resident can file what's now called a TSI, but was a TSA more recently. And a lot of them can come through, but we also have ANCs, and ANCs are also passing their own resolutions relating to TSIs, but yet those don't get attention.
Yes.
I authored, this ANC passed a resolution that I personally authored over 6 months ago. And it was related to Columbia Road. And it happened to be that there was a car that came up and over the curb. Luckily, no one was standing at the bus stop, but came crashing through a set of bushes and totally obliterated, you know, whatever trees and bushes were there. And, you know, I hope that the driver was okay. But we had requested a series of very simple improvements to Columbia Road, including high visibility, paint, beacons, daylighting along these crosswalks that are on Columbia Road. However, it's been 6 months, and this was requested not only by a commissioner, but also put in separately by a resident. Not only that, but there was a resolution from an ANC. But yet 6 months later, none of those crosswalks have been repainted. There hasn't been a beacon put in place. There isn't even a pylon down. And I'm sitting here talking about, well, we need to rethink street design and measure things differently, but we're not even doing the first part, okay, the tactics. So, you know, when I talk about urgency and how to prioritize, I'm starting to wonder, if there are thousands submitted every year, how many of those TSIs actually effectuate some kind of change? What percentage?
So that's a great question. In the past, I would say not that many of the TSIs resulted in probably what you would see from the public as a big change. And that is something we changed, which is great. That just means there's more to do at the end of it. Now, the ones that you submitted recently, you should take a look at that, because that should be under this new regime doing better. So let's please follow up on those specific ones. And I know Cynthia is keeping track of a lot of those things. So maybe we can follow up separately on where those are in the process and what they're looking like. Now, when we get down to it, when something has been, we say we are going to do, boom, you got your decision, the construction still has to happen. So that is the next part of the process. So we have kind of the evaluation and decision making, and then there's construction. And frankly, there is a backlog on construction, even of those seemingly minor things across the district that's quite large because of COVID-related staffing reductions. I'm sure many of you worked from home during that time. Our operations side of the house was not able to work from home. They have to work in the field. They often have to work in multiple people per vehicle and in the same spaces. And we had to take precautions before the vaccines were available. The good news is vaccines are available now, they're required by the mayor. So we're in much better shape. But we're still clearing up that backlog on the execution phase. So like construction, like what you're looking for. But let's look at those specific ones, because I would think, given what I know about what's going on in that team, I would think that those would have been at least resolved for the first part. And Cynthia can help us follow up on each individual one and take a look at them. I will say beacons typically are a heavier lift than, say, markings. Now, everything's caught up when there's a backlog. And for example, there's a supply shortage of poles right now. So some things are specifically held up because of COVID-related shortages. And this is all recent. This is an excuse for things that happened last year or the year before. I'm just telling you, if we have a new process in place, I think you're going to feel more satisfied by it, but it may take a few more months before we kind of get there on our delivery, especially on the construction side. Let's keep in dialogue about it and try and resolve those specific issues really.
And just to jump in, thank you, Linda, for that. I spoke with you, Commissioner Ronnie, a little bit before this call, but I will make sure I follow up with you and other members of the commission if we all want to have a separate meeting just talking about the ongoing TSIs, and I'll make sure I provide updates for those, and then look into the service request for the high visibility crosswalks too to see where those are at. And make sure I provide updates to the team. I know that there was, and I just want to share the tool as a resource. I will connect with either the committee or with the ANC as a whole during the next meeting. But I do want to share the link to the TSI dashboard. And as Linda mentioned, this is under the new format that we're using for traffic safety investigations, where residents, ANCs, and just anybody who wants to go ahead and track the traffic safety assessment, traffic safety investigation they've put in, they can go ahead and do so on this dashboard. Again, you're more than welcome to reach out to me, and I'll go ahead and put my contact information in the chat, but I will post the link to this dashboard too, so you will all have access to it.
Thank you, Cynthia and Ms. Bailey. We appreciate the work that TDOT is doing. We do want an urgency behind it. And you had mentioned COVID, and I think COVID is another example of why it's so important that our streets and our transportation infrastructure is safe for everyone. We are working from home now. There's more people out on the streets. There's more people biking. There's more people walking on scooters, and it's not safe for everyone. And when we flag something and we can't get action on it, that's one set of serious problems. And I think what I previously had alluded to was that we're looking at this also a different way than we should be. We should be measuring things differently. How do we get ahead of the problem? How do we make sure that something like this doesn't happen instead of always coming in after the fact? So beacons are great. Put the pylons, put the paint where we request it. Let's put up a beacon where it's requested, please. But also, how do we change the street design? And I'm not a transportation engineer, but I can see that it has to happen.
We are trying to, I appreciate your points on that. And I think that the TSI process is imperfect, in my opinion, but it is one way to get at like non-crash related priorities. The other way is through our crash data. We have a typical year around 6,000 or 7,000 injury crashes. We map those out and we look at where those are concentrated and try and look for opportunities to improve safety at those locations. And we are doing this season that's just about coming to a close now. We're doing 25 sites, high injury intersections, and we'll be doing another 25 next year. Those are still getting finalized, which ones those are, but that's a more district-wide program, obviously, because we're evaluating those across the district. I can kind of come back at some point if you like and talk a little bit more about that. I don't have those, as I said, the 2022 ones finalized yet, but that's another way we look at it. And that's a proactive safety system in the sense that we don't wait for residents to flag those for us. We're using crash data to highlight those. And really the other way that we get safety flags at this point is through the TSI program. And by staffing it up and adding resources to that program, I'm hopeful that it can feel more effective in the public and we can get more projects done at those sites as well. When we go out and do the TSIs, we look at things, for example, sight lines is very important. When you come to a corner, whether you're walking, riding, rolling, driving, your visibility to other people coming to that conflict point, right, at the intersection is really important, right? That's one of our first lines of defense, is trying to make sure people see each other in time. avoid crashes or mitigate any crashes. And that's something we can evaluate without any crash data. We just go out and look, like, and is there something in the way of these sight lines to the other directions? And that's kind of part of what is sometimes called a road safety audit, where we just look at those things. We're not looking at crash patterns or anything else like that. We just look at that information on site. So that's, I guess, an example of something that doesn't rely on something happening or crash data to trigger a change.
And to the TSIs, to that point, there are, I could go on about the ANC resolutions that were not responded to, that also had TSIs associated with them or had 311 requests associated with them. That should be a way to filter what the community wants, because we are elected by the community. So there should be some priority system. I can also point to, other than resolutions passed by our ANC, resolutions passed by our business improvement district citing safety improvements needed, a letter written by our council member citing safety improvements that are needed. But yet it's been 18 months or 15 months since we asked for improvements on 18th Street, but have received nothing. And it's such a black box. And that's part of these frustrations, right? You have all these organizations, elected officials, private organizations like the BID, and residents asking for the same things, but we don't get feedback.
Mm-hmm. So let's follow up on those specific TSIs. Like I said, I think that I hear your frustration, and it is frustrating. It's taken too long, and I think that you'll find that less going forward, I hope, and I look forward to working on that. I think that this is more successful going forward.
Thank you for joining us tonight. Questions from members of the public, please raise your hand or dial *9 if you're dialing in. Commissioner Ben Butz. Go right ahead.
All right, thank you very much. My main questions really revolve around, I think you can hear the visible frustration that we've had, and this has been a very traumatic week for our neighborhood. And my question really comes down to kind of what Commissioner Rani was saying, is that it does seem like it's a black box. I know you've said that we're working on it, but you have a lot of allies in the community who want safer streets, who have raised their voice, and we're looking to help. And, when we had the budget presentation earlier this year, there is no sense of urgency that we need more staff, that we need more people, that we need more things. And a lot of what I've heard today is, we'll look into these specific things. But my question is what is the fundamental problem that's happening? This isn't just happening this year. It hasn't just been happening because of COVID. And what do you need from us? And what do you need from the community who's supporting you, who wants to see these things improve and have been saying it for years? What do you need from us? What more do you need from us? We've tried resolutions, we've tried, any support, and it does feel like it's just a black box. And it does feel like we have, I don't know how many ANC commissioners I have talked to who are looking through their neighborhood, looking for problems, looking for issues, and they just never seem to be resolved. And that's, we're not traffic engineers. We don't know how to fix these things, but we do know that what is happening now is just, it can't continue. And we're not here, tonight, I haven't heard, previous meetings, I haven't heard what more you need. What is holding things up other than, we're trying new systems, our previous systems didn't work, but there's no sense of urgency. And I'd really like to hear, what is the problem? What is going on?
Thank you, Commissioner Butz. Very well said. Ms. Bailey.
Oh, sorry. Can I jump in before you do, Linda?
Go ahead.
Just wanted to go ahead and add, I'm more than happy to commit moving forward, either monthly, virtual, and then in person, whatever you all prefer, to have individual meetings with the commissioners as well as site visits. And I'm more than happy to work through that. But as you mentioned, something that would be helpful on your end that I think would help me, help you, and everyone in the community is to ensure that 311 service requests are submitted properly and with enough detail as possible, so we are able to service the concerns that are mentioned. For example, if a service request is inputted incorrectly, meaning it's not at the address where the concern is, it will be closed only because we go based off of the address that's submitted for that request. So if an improper address is submitted, it will be closed. So I think it's better to work together. If there's anything I can do on my end, if there's no address that's visible on the website, whatever it is, feel free to reach out to me and I can help you input that request. But I think that would be a major step to make sure that the address is correct on the request. Sharing that number with me so I'm able to provide you those updates directly would be great, because in most instances, the updates are shared to the person who put in that request, because that's the email address that's attached to it, the phone number, all that stuff. So I just want to make sure that once you share that number, I can go ahead and continue providing regular updates to you, add that to a list on my end so I can go ahead and have that open communication with everyone that wants to get that information as it's going. So I think that would be a very helpful step.
Just following up on the ones, I think that I definitely would. I think that makes sense. I'm a rather new commissioner, so I apologize if this is common knowledge or some or already out there. But what are the metrics for closing those? For how long they're open? For processing them? Are there any metrics that are shared publicly? Is there any sort of reporting that we can have kind of monthly of how many are open? Any sort of dashboard that can be shared with the ANC?
I think Cynthia posted the link to the dashboard. That's the one that starts dcgis.maps.arcgis, which she posted at 7:41. Take a look at that, and that should provide some more transparency into the TSIs specifically. I want to speak to some of the bigger questions you're asking, Ms. Butz, that here's what we need to do to get to Vision Zero in the city. We're doing really well for a US city. That doesn't mean we need to get better, but we're doing really well. We're following a national trend under COVID where congestion going away has been a major safety. I think overall in the US, I saw today the fatalities are up 18%, I think, across the US. And most of the US, the fatality rate is around 11 fatalities per 100,000 population. Even with the increase, we're around 5. So we're already half as many, way better than the rest of the US. That varies a lot within the district from ward to ward. Ward 1 is actually a safer ward in general. Ward 8 has a fatality rate of the last few years of with 13. So it's really uneven. And we really need to address the safety issues where we can find them, specifically with our crash rates. And that is a major source of how we want to look at it, and we want to prioritize our high injury corridors. And we do have projects moving forward in those to address that. And then I just want to talk a little bit about high level, like what are we doing? There's conflict mitigation or improvement. Those are at intersections typically. That's where conflicts mostly happen. That's where, like at 18th and Columbia, for example, there's a lot of different conflicts. There's a lot of movements at that intersection along different roads involved. The other thing, big thing we do is speed management, trying to manage speeds, reduce speeds. And then more globally, a major issue is shifting modes. We already have an excellent mode share for the US for a city. We need to get even better. taking transit is extremely safe. Exposing people to high-speed roadways is not. So we really need to keep pushing on that mode share. So those are kind of like really high-level things that we're trying to push on. We do have a really ambitious plan on bike lanes and on bus lanes right now, which I'm really happy with. That doesn't fix everything, but that's something that's really important when we talk about mode shift. And then, as I said, we have our HSIP program, which is based on crash, not waiting for people from the community to come to us, but based on crash rates. The Highway Safety Improvement Program that looks at high intersections, as well as our high injury corridors, which we'll be talking more about in the coming months, which we're already doing a lot of work on those. For example, we have a capital project on Southern Avenue, where we've had several fatalities this year already, and in Ward 8 and Ward 7. And that project is moving forward on a section of Southern Avenue this year. Those are really critical investments we have to make if we're going to lower the fatality rate, particularly in some of our higher fatality rate wards.
Ms. Bailey, as you were speaking, I appreciate those comments, and I appreciate the comments of my fellow Commissioner Butz. As I was just taking some notes. You had mentioned the fatality rates in Ward 1 are low as compared to other parts of the city, and fatalities in general have gone up during COVID, which should be reason to provide more attention. But some of the things, as I'm just jotting it down in this moment, and why aren't we measuring the number of why isn't there a metric just about the length of the crosswalk as it relates to speeds and whether that's a signalized intersection, so that you can reduce those, so you can come up with a metric that says, well, we have this many thousands of crosswalks, of that 5% of them are this extraordinary length that is not at a signalized intersection, and we intend to address that by putting bulb outs or by putting a beacon there so that we do make it signalized. It's these kinds of metrics that I'd like to see, conflict points around intersections, speeds, things like that, as opposed to just opening with, well, we're doing a good job because fatalities are low.
I apologize. I shouldn't ever. The urgency that I express as being is still where I come from. I'm just trying to express the difficulty of getting to a better place, because the US pattern is way worse. And people are being trained, like the way we train drivers in this country is by letting them drive. And I'm not saying that's my policy, but that is something that has been the policy in the US for a long time. And people are getting trained to drive in places where much more dangerous behavior is permitted, I would say, promoted. And so I always hesitate to talk about how we're doing, because like any number is too many. Every single fatality is someone's mourning that person. Doesn't matter. Not everyone makes the headlines, frankly, but even the fatalities that don't make headlines are still, people are mourning that person and missing them. And any one is too many. So my goal is not to say this many is okay. I'm just trying to express how difficult it is to get to a better space in the situation we're in the place we're in nationally, I'd say, and regionally, safety. So that's really my challenge. That's, I do have an urgency about it. It can be very frustrating, and I feel frustrated. That doesn't have to matter to you, but I'm just saying that we have a lot of urgency, but it's very difficult to get to a better place.
I didn't mean to distract it from, by talking about the fatalities, but these other metrics, right? Like, do we have data on the crosswalks in the city? Do we have data on the intersections, in the number of conflict points at intersections? How can, as you were saying these things, it's like, well, are these things quantified? Are each of the intersections measured in that way? Conflict points that
unsafe, length of crosswalk that is, if it takes a long time to cross the street and there's a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit, well, you're increasing risk there, right? Maybe that should be signalized.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a really good point. We have a lot of data on things like what we call double threat or multiple threat uncontrolled crosswalks. That's where there's an uncontrolled crosswalk, like the one where the flood occurred, but there's multiple lanes going through it in each direction. And we do have a program to try and address those and improve them. There's a couple different ways we improve them, but there's a standard for that. We do look, when we go in with the TSI, we do look for opportunities to shorten crosswalks by doing bulb outs, as you explained. We also look at opportunities to put in median refuge islands, which simplifies the crossing task for the person who's walking for the most part, by allowing them to kind of stop in the middle in a safe space between the two sides. So we have a lot of those toolbox items, and a lot of it is frankly the challenge of rolling them out as fast as we like. And that's why I was kind of talking about our improvements to our TSI process, trying to increase the speed that we can roll this out.
Thank you. I want to get to the other hand. So Commissioner Carano, you've had your hand up. Go right ahead.
Yeah, Commissioner Boots really hit my question on the head, which is what else can we as a commission and as commissioners do? So I appreciate you sharing some of that. And I guess I'll just acknowledge that I know there are a lot DDOT. I have friends who work there, and I've heard from many people they're equally traumatized and frustrated by these incidents across the city and what feels like slow progress. And I guess I'll just acknowledge it feels like this is a political problem that goes above DDOT. And that's not really a question that either of our guests can answer, but as a commission, maybe we should be asking ourselves what else we can do to generate more political pressure, because it doesn't feel like this is an issue that is a priority shared by all of our leaders across the city. I'll acknowledge that our council member has been very supportive, but it doesn't seem like there is the same sense of urgency across the entire city.
I appreciate that comment, Commissioner Carano. Ms. Bailey, Ms. Turcios, anything to add there?
I didn't really hear a question, but I think I could just say that I think there is a genuine concern and priority on this. I think the more as a commission, you can kind of help us prioritize, especially within your ANC at a minimum, what is most important. I think better. I think the trade-offs are the hard thing, right? The prioritization is not hard, except when it comes to deprioritizing something else, right? So the more prioritization you can assist with, I think the better in general.
Commissioner Clem, you have your hand up.
Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to talk about how I think that there are also simple ways. I mean, I understand that DDOT is very busy and there's a lot of requests, but there's also some very, very simple things that I think that DDOT could do or should do in the meantime while we're waiting for long studies like TSIs or even longer studies on such things as Columbia Road. To that point, there should be no turn on reds on signs on 18th and Columbia, and I have not only requested them, but other people in commission have requested them, and they're not in place. Also, there should be no 25-mile-an-hour speed limit signs in the neighborhood, because other than 16th Street and some other cross streets or some other outer streets, the neighborhood itself has 25-mile-an-hour posted signs. And for a year and a half, the emergency ruling has gone through, the mayor's emergency ruling for 25-mile-an-hour speed limits throughout the city has been a law for a year and a half. So why is a neighborhood having posted signs of 25 miles an hour? These are very simple solutions that could be implemented quickly, giving notice to drivers that this is a neighborhood and that they should slow down. No turns on red, that should be automatic. There are ability to turn on red around Marie Reed in elementary school. That's dangerous. I recognize that there are bigger issues. I'm not saying that a no turn on red is going to solve a lot of problems. I'm just saying that these are things that could be implemented while waiting for bigger picture and bigger solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Clem. If I can jump in on this, I am more than happy to, and I think the last time we spoke, I mentioned it too. I'm more than happy to do a site visit with you, walk around your SMD or other areas that you'd like to flag for a no turn on red sign. A TSI is needed if it's a new sign, if it's a replacement of a sign that's missing. I'm more than happy to work with you on that to submit a 311 request for a replacement sign. And then as for the 25-mile-per-hour signage that needs to be changed to, please let me know the exact addresses for those, and I'm happy to put in those requests and get those moving forward with our field operations branch and get those printed and installed. But again, I'm happy to connect with you after this meeting to go ahead and schedule a site visit. Rain or shine, I'm happy to be out there.
Thank you, Cynthia. I have outstanding service requests through 311 for the 25-mile-an-hour signs that I know of. But yes, absolutely. Let's
okay. Please send those to me so I can go ahead and see why they're outstanding, what the holdup is, and get those moving on the back end.
Thank you.
No problem.
Commissioner Falaskini.
Thank you, Chairman. And thank you, Ms. Bailey and Ms. Turcios, for joining us today. I realize that you're taking heat for other people's actions and inactions tonight, and I think that's part of the nature of your job. But I appreciate you being here to do it. I'm only here 2 weeks. I'm on the job now just 2 weeks, so I'm still learning the process and figuring out how it all works. But I understood Ms. Turcios to say that she would be willing to put together a list of the outstanding requests that are in place for the district to go through them with us. I think what I would also really appreciate is accountability on the timing, when those requests were made, how long they've been in process, what has been done, if anything, to start to effectuate change on any of these, and having a sense of accountability where we are regularly working with you all to have visibility on all the requests that are being made in the district, in 1C, to make sure that we understand the timing and how long it's taking place, and to break it up by each of our single member districts, that we have a sense of where we need to follow up to ensure that our constituents' requests are being met and that we're making progress towards real change here. And so I am fully committed to doing those meetings on a monthly basis if that's what we need to do. But I want to have greater visibility into what's being requested in my single member district and in our overall Adams Morgan, and to make sure that we're making real change towards improving people's lives in the district through the Department of Transportation. So thank you for being here, and I look forward to working with both of you as we move forward.
Thank you, Commissioner, for clarifying. It's a list for the ANC. When you said for the entire district, I was going to go ahead and jump in that I don't have everything for the entire district. But yes, I'm more than happy to work with you all as a whole, as well as an individual, to get everything up to date on your SMD. And I'll also send you some things that had previously sent to the chair about 1CO7. So you're in the loop on that as well.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Are there questions from other commissioners or members of the public? Commissioner Faulkner, go right ahead.
Yeah, I don't have much to add to. I think my fellow commissioners have done a very good job of articulating a lot of my concerns and frustrations. And I guess I just wanted to mention that, as Ms. Bailey, as you pointed out, Ward 1 does have lower traffic fatalities than Ward 8 and other parts of the city. And I think, one thing that is frustrating is I think that I have talked to commissioners from Ward 7 and Ward 8 and parts of the city with higher levels of fatalities, and they're feeling similar frustrations. And I think, and I'm sure you know that. And I just want to acknowledge that I think we don't want to say that like, oh, Adams Morgan needs all the attention. I think what we want is for every part of the city to be able to get things addressed quickly and without follow-up. Because I just want to acknowledge that the burden of the traffic violence is not evenly distributed, and that I know, I think we all know that pedestrian infrastructure is much worse in parts of the city, and but it's I don't know if our frustration would be a little lessened if we thought, okay, well, they're really focusing on one area, and I know that you are working on projects and that things are getting better, but I just want to say that I because I do know that it's worse for other parts of the city, but we did just see a tragic death that we all realized could have been any of us, and that it's hard to it's hard to feel like everyone is just trying to get things better, and that it just isn't happening fast enough, and again, I know there are many factors behind that. And I know, Commissioner Butz asked about what we can do. And I think I have had I have had so many people talk to me in the past few days to say, like, what can we do? What can we do? Because this is just, it is just untenable.
Yeah, and I just want to acknowledge, I didn't say that to imply that this, like I said, any death is just one too many. And that's our goal is to change that, like in how we do our projects and how we see our transportation system, frankly, which is pretty big undertaking. And I guess part of the reason I was talking about Ward 8 is because I'm excited we're doing the Southern Avenue project, which is super far from where you all are. But to me, that's a high priority because we just had terrible, really bad couple of years on Southern Avenue, which is a very long road, but I think 8 fatalities just in the last 2 years. I mean, it's really bad. So I'm just excited we're doing that. That's something I'm like pushing internally because we've seen all those fatalities. And in response to this one, when something happens, we want to take the opportunity to go there and look for opportunities to improve safety. And that's what we're doing at the site of this fatality. And that's to honor the memory of the person who passed. And it's also to honor the feelings of the community that this is something that's unacceptable and we need to change things. So that's where we're going with that. That's where we're looking to see change. And it doesn't have to be limited to that one site, but I'm just saying that's kind of the motivation for that work that we're doing there. And we do hope that it improves things and that it feels better for people in the community, and of course that those crashes or near misses go down as well.
Thank you, commissioners. Thank you, members of the public. Thank you, Ms. Bailey. Thank you, Ms. Turcios, for joining us this evening. Commissioner Falaskini.
Sorry, I just wanted to acknowledge there was a question from Oksana Redko in the comments about what is the status of the contraflow bike lanes on Linear Place and Argonne Place Northwest.
I didn't see that question. I still don't see the question, but
It's, yeah, I think that's just it. I don't have an update on that, but Cynthia, do you have any updates on that project?
Yes, I responded to Oksana directly. If you can just send me an email and I'll go ahead and get the latest from Will on that internally and then share that with Oksana and as well as the ANC. But I also had my hand up. I wanted to go ahead and clarify something I said. So yes, 311 requests are helpful. And I know the ANC as well as others across the city go to Twitter to submit requests, which is great. I think another next step that would be helpful on my end to get those requests moving is sending me directly that service request. I'm not on Twitter all the time and I can't keep up with the ones submitted through there, but if they're sent directly to my email address after that, if that's the means in which you'd like to submit that request, that's fine. But if you share that number with me, I'm able to move that accordingly on my end. So I would really appreciate your help with that if you all can send those to me. Thank you.
okay. Well, thanks to everyone for joining. And if there's no other questions, I don't see any other hands up or questions in the chat. So we will go
Amir, another question just popped up.
I'll just read this. With the aggressive development of the areas, Columbia to Kalorama, U and Champlain to Ontario, is there an integrated plan on large-scale residential buildings in light of the traffic capacity neighborhood roads can handle, as well as the traffic increase because of the dramatic increase in population? So I think what that is getting to is, there's a lot of pedestrians around, especially in these dense areas, like our main streets in Adams Morgan, Columbia Road, and 18th Street, among other streets nearby, Champlain, Ontario, and Kalorama. So what is DDOT doing there to make this safer with all the pedestrian producing facilities and buildings around our streets? How is street design keeping up with that? As a paraphrase.
So I think that it was a pretty specific question. There might be a specific answer, and I don't know, Cynthia, I think someone else posted in the chat that maybe Office of Planning would have the answer to that specific corridor and the work. Cynthia, do you think you could connect with that?
I believe it was Dawn, and I'm sorry if that's not your name or if I'm not pronouncing it correctly. I put my email address in the chat, and just in case you can't see it, it's Cynthia, CYNTHIA .Turcios, TURCIOS1 @dc.gov. If you can send me an email and I'll follow up with you. I know there are a few ongoing TSIs in the area, and perhaps not directly in this corridor, but there are a few. And they may tackle this issue, but also our Schools to Safety Division may be working, because Marie Reed is along this strip, may be working on different things to bring safety metrics to the school. But if that's not your question, I'm happy to connect with you after this to make sure we answer your specific concerns. And if there's any ideas that you have, I'm more than happy to work with you on submitting a TSI to make sure your ideas are heard and are investigated further.
And it's a question that came up based on what Don's question is that, our neighborhoods have changed a lot, in the 12 years I've lived here, they change, but the street design remains the same. So how does street design respond to changing neighborhoods like that? which I think more concisely maybe puts Don's questions more concisely. Ms. Bailey.
So there's a couple things we do during development review, which DDOT does participate in from transportation. And unfortunately, I'm not the expert on this, but I can just say that when it exceeds a certain size, I believe, we require the developer to develop a pedestrian safety plan to reach specific types of locations like transit access points and things like that. And I've studied the other, and I just don't know all the details, but we can get that if you want to look at that. And I just don't know if that's going to have been triggered by the developments you're specifically referencing. That's what I was saying, it's a specific question. But if you look at, so I work in Navy Yard, and in Navy Yard, there's been a lot of new development that's fallen under this, and they've been able to get some pedestrian improvements paid for and constructed as part of those two projects, even though they're not immediately adjacent to the building through that review process. So that's one way that that can be dealt with. And I just don't know, unfortunately, if those specific projects we're thinking of, whether they've been triggering that or not. I just don't know exactly the parameters on those. Neither the rules nor the developments, because I don't work on them specifically. But that has been a significant improvement of a method for specific improvements that have been really helpful, I think, in areas seeing especially larger new developments going up on sometimes land that have been underutilized.
I think that's that's fair, and it's probably something this commission wants to look further into, like what metrics drive changes in street design, and street design. And so these are helpful discussions, and hopefully we can continue them. And so there is a hand out. Don, go right ahead.
Hello there. Thank you for hearing me. My name is Don Mulliken, and I live on Champlain Street. And the reason I raised the issue is just in the past 10 to 15 years, we've seen 5 to 6 to 7 large residential buildings. I am a resident of one of those as well. Condo buildings from Columbia at the top of Champlain all the way down Champlain, numerous buildings. We've seen Reed reopen, development along Kalorama, a new building on Kalorama, ready for occupancy, affordable housing building, which is great, and conversion of single family homes on Ontario into multi-unit homes. And with that, on top of all of that, a large hotel, the Line Hotel at the top of Champlain at Columbia. Is there a plan to take into account the number of residents introduced into this dense area, this denser and denser area of Adams Morgan? Because it seems like the predominant amount of development is happening in these 4, 5, 6 blocks, not on the other side of 18th, which is kind of static now. And what that is leading to is just volumes of traffic going up and down and through and getting jammed and stuck in Kalorama and Ontario, and Champlain becomes a mess, and people start rerouting, get frustrated, get aggressive. Then they pop out onto Columbia ready to go, and they hit the gas. And it seems like the neighborhood has become dense and dense and dense as planned maybe 15, 20 years ago. But maybe the time to step back and pause and think about where do we need, more garages or better public transportation, rather than increasing the car owning population in what has transitioned to a row home, row house, few unit building to somewhat mega streets with very large condo towering buildings, and it's starting to kind of be felt, even though it's lagging many years as to when these plans were put into place. So does the ANC coordinate the work of traffic safety and flow in its consideration, and does DDOT and the Planning Commission coordinate in terms of the impacts of these in what seem to be individual construction projects, but every few years there's a new great addition to the neighborhood. But with it, it doesn't seem that the roadways, flow, and capacity of the streetscape is being addressed for safety and for just habitability. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment, Don. Is there something you'd like to add, Ms. Turcios, Ms. Bailey?
I just say those are all valid concerns. I think that it's part of the growing district and population at this point, growing city, and I think that the Office of Planning has done some work on this, and I would definitely want them to try and address that, and as best they could. I think that they're the place where the zoning and the kind of development comes together. So I would say that's probably a good site.
And we have a question from Mr. Gordon Chaffin. Go right ahead.
Hey, thanks, Amir. Linda, I wanted to ask you what DDOT is thinking as far as the community outreach process for more serious interventions. TSIs, as I understand them, are not designed to deliver capital budget projects, certainly, and they're maybe you can do speed humps, but it's not something that you can do curbing changes or anything. And so a lot of people have been really frustrated by how it takes 18 months to get a sign that drivers will ignore anyway. And so I guess how are we going to get to a point, how are you guys going to get to the point where you're delivering fundamental design change to the streets faster, like Columbia? Because again, as I understand them, TSIs are not, they can't accomplish that. It's maybe an RRFB 2 years from now. It's not like a changed curb next month.
That's a really good question. We have what I sometimes call our medium-sized projects that are not major capital projects are done by my colleagues in the Transportation Engineering and Safety Division, and they're the same people that do the TSIs. And so they are my partner on some of those faster turnaround projects, like we redesigned, we changed the operations of Florida Avenue Northeast in 2019 to improve safety, especially for people cycling, but also trying to slow down traffic because of speeding issues in that corridor. It was very successful, and I would call that a medium-sized project because it was more than $1 million and less than $5 million or something like that in terms of cost. That's a pretty big lift, and our capacity to do that, we're still looking at ways to expand that because, as I said, that's the same group that's doing TSI. We have to expand their capacity to do both those things in order to, I think, meet expectations and change the safety profile of some of those high injury corridors. So that's working on.
If there are no other questions from members of the public or my fellow commissioners, we will move on to the next agenda item. Thank you, Ms. Bailey. Thank you, Ms. Turcios, for joining us. And we will be in touch to follow up on these other items.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So the next item on our agenda is a request for a special exception at 2329 Champlain Street. There have been new developments regarding this request for zoning relief, and these new developments happen or come to light
just 30 minutes prior to this meeting. And, there are some issues with the Office of Tax and Revenue and the property in question. Therefore, the committee will not be hearing a request for zoning relief tonight. However, I do think that we should be voting to place this on our agenda for December 1st, given that the property owners are still, well, as of now, they still will be appearing before the Board of Zoning Adjustment on December 15th. So there is talk of a delay, but we're not sure if that's going to happen. We certainly want to make sure that if there isn't a delay, that our ANC still has an opportunity to weigh in, and our last opportunity to do that would be December 1st. So before I make any motion, I'd like to pause and give my commissioners, my fellow commissioners, an opportunity to say anything regarding this. Doesn't sound like it. Okay.
Sorry, I was just trying to defer to Megan there for a second if she wanted to say something, but if not, then I will just say I've gotten a lot of feedback from the community. I sent out a survey to homeowners and residents within about 200 yards of where the proposed building will take place. So I've gotten a lot of feedback. I'm looking forward to lifting that up and giving people that voice when we have an opportunity to discuss the matter. But given the development that came to light today, this is not the correct time to deal with this issue until the developer has an opportunity to respond to the concerns that are honestly quite serious are raised. So until that time, I think that we need to hold off on hearing the rest of the community voice on this, but it will happen. Rest assured, this is not us trying to get out of having the community voice heard. It's quite the opposite. It's about making sure that the community's voice is heard and that serious concerns are addressed before we move forward.
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner Falaskini. And so, as I said, because there's a question in the chat about when there will be a proper hearing consideration. So December 1st, should this matter remain on the BZA's agenda for December 15th, then this ANC will hear and consider the request for zoning relief on December 1st at 7 p.m. You can find meeting access details at anc1c.org. So I move that we place consideration of this agenda item on the meeting agenda of our full commission for December 1st. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Call to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Any abstentions? Okay. So there's a question about the committee. When will the committee conduct this business? Before the business can be conducted at the committee. Discussions can take place, but committees make recommendations to the full ANC, and the business of passing a resolution or a letter of support or a letter of opposition or anything that is an action of the full ANC occurs only at the meeting of the full ANC. And so the committee could not pass anything but a recommendation to the full ANC in order to whether it would be for or against this project. So I hope that answers the question that Don had posed. And the next time that we will hear about this matter will be on December 1st at 7 p.m. And if in the meantime, you have information that you would like to send to or regarding this particular matter on Champlain, please send it to your commissioner. You can find our email addresses at anc1c.org. So reach out to your individual commissioner, and we can continue that conversation on December 1st. So it was good seeing my fellow commissioners tonight and everyone else on the call. And signing off. Thank you.